All right, we are live. How's it going, everybody? This is Brian Funk. Thanks for joining me. Good to have you here. Tonight, gonna be talking about a new Ableton Live Pack that I've just finished. I've got lots of my voice coming in the background here. Trying to figure out where I'm coming from here. All right, sorry about that. So yeah, I've just released a brand new pack called Air Organ, and it is a collection of sounds made from an old vintage GE Air Organ. In fact, I've got it right here to show you. Got this thing off of eBay a couple months ago. I actually did a live stream while sampling it. I sampled it using two mics. One of them is this PR40 by Heil that I use for the podcast. It's a condenser. I'm sorry, it's a dynamic mic. So it's really nice for kind of cutting out the background noise. And I also used sorry, I wrote Akai. It's AKG C414. I'll have to fix that in my text here. But that's a condenser, which gets more sound, more room. It's more sensitive. And that kind of picked up some of the more subtle noises that the air organ makes. I could probably turn this thing on. It takes a second to like build up its courage. And I'm hoping maybe this mic I've got on, this lav mic, will pick it up just so you can hear it. Maybe if I even like get close, you know? That's the air organ sound right there. It makes a lot of noise. It's an air organ, so it's actually blowing air. And I guess when you press down the key, it allows the air to hit the reeds, I assume, because it sounds very reedy. And makes your notes. It's got, I think, 25 keys or so. And I sampled them all, put them into these Ableton Live instruments. So there's altogether, there's 24 instruments. There's one that's set up with the C414, which you can hear right now. That's the condenser mic. It picks up a little more noise. Then I have another instrument with a Heil. And this one to me is a little quieter. It's not, it doesn't have quite as much of the noise of like the keys or the air itself. But the C414 one is a little more, maybe it has a little more sparkle on top. Now, I tried something else here where I ran all of the samples through some noise reduction using the Isotope RX7, I think is what I have. So I've got two noise reduced versions of this too. So this is the original C414. And here it is, noise reduced. It cuts out a little bit of the extra air, a little bit of some of the noises. And then this is the noise reduced one off the condenser mic. So if you want like slightly cleaner versions of these instruments, these two are for you. When you open up the pack, air organ, you get the presets here, and we can look inside what they're called real quick. These ones that are marked init are the four I just went over. So this is the pure C414 one. This is the pure PR40, and then these are the noise reduced versions. They are there for you. Hey, what's up, BDs in the chat? What's up? No, these are not samples you sent me, man. This came right off of this guy, this air organ, direct from eBay. BD likes to send samples over. And we've made packs in the past of collaborations. So the first four in the set are those more traditional air organ sounds. What's kind of cool about it is, maybe I'll play with this one and I'll open it up for you. And I'm going to turn it into a sampler so you can see exactly how I made it. We've got all the samples in here. Like I said, I think there's 25. And I've stretched out the highest note and the lowest note to expand the capabilities. So like you can't play that note on this actual air organ. So you get a little more bass out of it, and you get some high end too. And interesting things happen in the higher samples as the noise gets pitched up. It kind of starts to, especially really high. Interesting stuff happens when you start time stretching samples. Set this to my octave range right here. That covers all the notes. So here they all are. And the way I set up these instrument racks was through the sampler, and I'm using the filter. So I'll go to the filter tab here so you can see that. We got it. Usually it's a low pass filter, but there are some presets that I'll get to that have maybe like a high pass or a band pass. And you got your resonance. I have the filter set to the MS-20 filter. That I think is my favorite of them all. But I've got it at the 12 dB, so it's not quite as drastic as I often like it, but I wanted to still get some of the air, some of that top end of this thing. Let's see, we've got a filter envelope. So that's gonna, this next part is gonna control this section here. So we can turn up the amount. And as we go into the positive range, we are moving the filter, we're making it more open and then closing it over time to the point that you have set at your filter frequency. So if I crank this all the way up, and I'll bring this all the way down, or somewhat all the way down, the filter is going to start way over here, all the way open, and over the course of, let's say, 4 seconds, it'll go to this point. You can really hear it if I increase the resonance. And by now, it's all the way down there. So this gives it that like closing feeling. If you invert the amount, now the filter is going to start very low and open up. So if I bring it all the way down to negative 72, it should start pretty much all the way at the beginning and then open up. And that's over the course of 4 seconds too. So you can do a lot of sound design and shaping with just the filter on this instrument. And as you're going to see as I get inside these instruments and show you how they work, a lot of this is done just with what's inside Sampler. I had a lot of fun using the filters and also the FM oscillator for this. So the next section up is our FM portion, which is all along the bottom here. And I can turn up the volume. And that is bringing up this volume control here. Let's get our little zoom thing out of here. You can't see that, but that thing's in my way, so I just had to move that. So I'm going to open the filter all the way so we can hear this in all its glory. As I turn up the FM amount, I'm doing some frequency modulation. And that often results in this like high, sparkly, like digital sound too. And we have some control over our tuning. Way up high. We've got fine tuning. And then finally, we've got control over the type of oscillator we are using. So go through some of the saw waves. Sine waves. Got the squares. The triangle, the triangle is one of the softest sounding ones. And then we've got the noise. There we go. That does all a lot of times the FM amount is nicest in small doses. And we can use the envelope here to affect how that FM oscillation happens over time. And that's something that I do quite a lot in this pack, is using the envelopes and playing around with the different oscillators. So like, for instance, maybe I'll have this fade in over the course of, say, 2 seconds and then fade out. And we get that buzz that comes in and then it goes away. Crank it up a little bit. It sounds almost more like harmonics happening in that way. All right, so that is the structure of the pack. There's some modulation inside sampler, especially for pretty much all of these instruments. If you use your aftertouch, like Push has aftertouch, you'll get a bit of vibrato because the aftertouch is modulating the LFO1 amount for pitch. And that's in here, this little bit of pitch that I have at about 5.21 hertz. That's kilohertz. You can hear the vibrato come in as I put pressure on the note. Which is cool, it gives it a little more expression. Okay, so that is the basics of the pack. And now when we go inside some of our sounds, so sounds 5 through 24 are now more like sound design experiments that I've got going on here. And that's all these different sounds inside your presets folder. So let's just go through them a little bit, and maybe some of the more interesting things I'll kind of show you how they work. And with that. This one's called Dimension. There's no reverb on this, though it does sound like there might be. All of this is happening through some of the manipulation of sampler. So we've got a bit of filter modulation going on here. What happens when I let go is that the filter opens back up. And that's because of the release time here. And I think that gives it this like illusion of reverb. Move on to the next one called Puncture. I'll open it up. This one does have a delay on it. And over time, we are bringing in the FM frequency modulations. The tuning is giving it this certain kind of like higher pitch. As I turn it up, you'll hear it gets even higher. Brasileiro. Evo, what's up? Thanks for joining. It's kind of a fun knob to turn as you play. But most of the magic here is happening with the frequency modulation and the filter opening up. So the filter opens up pretty quickly, and then the frequency modulation starts kicking in. Next is Luffy. So on this sound, I wanted to get a more percussive attack. The air organ just swells in normally, but lucky type attack. And I'm going to make this into a sampler again. And I'm doing that by changing the sample offset using the aux envelope. So let's see if we can look at a sample here. Maybe C here. Not seeing it play. It's little. Maybe I have something else happening here too. I do. I also have the zone shift on, so that's complicating things for us. We're gonna just find out where the sample is. So let me go back into the sample tab. We'll get it. There it is. So even though I'm playing this C, which should really be playing back this sample, it's playing back this C sharp. And that's because I'm making use of the zone shift. And what zone shift does is just change the way your notes are being played, or change the way the samples are being played back on your keyboard. This is a great way to get a ton of variation out of a sound if you listen. And it only works if you have multiple samples, but just by turning this control, it's a lot of tonal variety. I think I have that at like 13. So to get back to my point before, you'll notice the sample is starting over here, and that's because I'm offsetting the sample start using this envelope. And that allows me to get the sound to start more in the middle and bypass this fade in, and that gives us more of the pluck sound. I got just a little bit of FM going on. Turn that off. The FM is giving us kind of a pluck sound, and that I'm sure has a very short envelope too, which it does, just 37 milliseconds. Turn this up. The point of this is to have that quick drop off in the frequency modulation so that we get the kind of click sound. Right. So yeah, I guess what I wanted to really emphasize in this walkthrough of this pack was just how you can get so much out of some of the parameters within Sampler. Some of these have other devices on it, like this one has a reverb, but most of them are really just working within Sampler. This is called Banner Razor. A lot of sound of something going up. And the reason for that is I've got this pitch envelope happening here. So this note starts out low and then gets high. And even as I let go, you'll notice it starts to drop back down very slightly. That's accomplished with the release. So the release goes up just a little bit here. It's set to a negative amount. If I were to turn this off, everything stays right at the right pitch, but here it rises from an octave below. Very quick. It's only happening over about half a second. Got a little bit of an attack here to kind of fade the sound in, and the same thing's happening with the filter envelope. The filter is basically doing this over the course of 3 seconds. Turn that off so you can just get a sense. But that kind of mellows out the beginning a little bit. And we've also got the same type of thing happening inside our frequency modulator, which is rising up and then coming back down. And it happens pretty quick, so that by about 3 seconds in, you don't even hear any more frequency modulation. And a little bit of reverb just to give it a nice bit of space. This one is called Waking. Nothing but sampler or simpler. And if I were to guess, I would say this sounds like it has a delay on it, but it does not. All of this is happening through some looping envelopes. So, I don't know if I have, I don't really have much going on in there. There's a tiny bit of frequency modulation. Just gives it a little extra bite, I guess. But magic is happening is in the filter envelope. So let me just turn it off. Turn it back on. And then let's look inside the modulation here. We've got our filter frequency being modulated with this saw wave. And saw wave has this like kind of like percussive thing because it's making that sort of shape with your sound, moving the filter from high to low, and it sounds like a chopping sound. I've got it set to eighth notes, and I've got the same thing going on pretty much with the filter envelope. It's also looping at eighth notes. And as this sound sort of fades out and decays away with our amplitude envelope, it kind of mimics the way a delay works. But what I think is kind of cool is the sound also sort of fades in as the filter is moving from very closed to a little more open. So you wouldn't be able to get that soft opening and then those like percussive almost plucks on the eighth note with just a delay, because the delay just repeats what it hears and you're not hearing that percussive opening. So this has this like cool effect of like swelling in and then getting like a plucky rhythmic chop going on. And that would go along with your BPM if I were to put the metronome on here. So it's in time with your music, which is kind of cool. All right, remarkable. So it sounded kind of epic to me. Again, just one device. No reverb or anything, but again, I think the reverb is happening with the movements and the filters and the frequency modulation. So we've got the filter envelopes starting up very open, and then over 16 seconds, it closes down to this particular frequency. So we get that high, frequencies, the high end, and then it slowly closes. If we were to just turn off the envelope, this is where it winds up. But the envelope lets us get this bite in the beginning. We've got our frequency modulation, a little triangle wave happening here with just well enough to give it more bite, but not too much to make it too crazy. Just a little bit of detuning with the fine tuning. And a big part of the sound is the zone shift, because I've dropped it to -48. We get a much more nasal sound. Whereas if I bring it back to 0, especially if I bring it to 48, it really mellows out. That fine tuning gives us like a nice kind of movement in the pitch. All righty, Rattling Parts. This one, I believe, also has some movement. Let's give it a listen. All right. So let's figure out how we did this. Looks like the filter envelope. So we've got a synced looping eighth note thing happening. Again, that should be in time with our music. And it sounds pretty good. So this would be a good sound. Excuse me. A good sound to have for rhythmic purposes. It fades in nicely, but then the rhythm comes out of it. again, like you wouldn't be able to get this necessarily with a delay, because the delay would need to hear that pluck in the beginning. But this is almost like the delay fades in, gives you this fun rhythm thing. Just a little bit of our FM. Not too much, but just enough to give it a little attitude. Plucking strings. This was meant to sound like strings that are being plucked. And I love that. Out of an air organ, you can get these kinds of sounds. Just to remind you, we're starting with this. I'm winding up with that. And I think I did the same modulation trick on the sample offset. Basically just changes the point at which the sample begins and allows us to get less of that fade in and start right in the middle. And we can use our amplitude envelope to get a nice pluck sound. And a great way to do that is to have a relatively short decay, a couple seconds. I don't know, is that short to you? It's relative, I guess. And to turn down the sustain. If we have the sustain up, we're sustaining the note, but as we bring it down, the sound fades out naturally, like a string would. And I'm getting a little bit of the high frequencies you get when you pluck a string by moving the filter envelope. So the filter starts out pretty open and quickly closes over the course of about a second. When you pluck a string with a pick, for instance, you're creating this very percussive and higher frequency type sound. We can emulate that with the filter. If we turn off this envelope, we lose that pluck. It's still a nice sound. But for this, I kind of wanted that impact. If I wanted less impact, I might reduce this a little bit. Basically, the more you turn up the filter envelope, the higher the frequency starts out on before it comes down to this value. Swirly girly. It's got a swirly sound to it. And that sounds like it's done with our LFO a bit. We're modulating the FM oscillator. So let's take a look at what's going on there. Got just a bit of frequency modulation. And our LFO is just turning the volume up and down real fast. None. And then a lot. We're also doing a little bit of volume modulation too, and this is happening a little bit faster. So we got these two pulsing sounds. Probably play with the phase to get some interesting stuff happening. Gives us some nice movement in the sound. Filter is not really doing much, just kind of closed a little bit. No envelope happening here. A little bit of modulation. Tuning affects that a lot. So most of the magic there is frequency modulation. All right, moving along down the hall. Down the hall has kind of like a hall reverb. That's how I got the name. So let's talk about it. We've got the filter envelope closing down. So without the filter envelope, we start out very mellow. The core of the sound is a pretty mellow sound. But the filter envelope lets us hear some of the high frequencies for about 4 seconds. We've got just a little bit of frequency modulation, nothing too crazy. Here's nothing. I think we had around 40 or so. Just a little bit. And it fades in too. What's kind of neat is it fades in as the filter is fading out. So they kind of like cancel each other out a little bit, but there's still like a little extra energy in the sound, but the filter is not totally cutting out because we've got a relatively small slope. Got a little bit of drive and shaper on here, just to give it some more bite. Sometimes you can get some really cool sounds by putting in some shapers and filtering it out. In this case, so this might be worth mentioning, this little button here makes a big difference when you're using shaper. What this is telling you is basically the signal flow. So are we going to shape the sound, which is like a type of distortion? Are we going to do it before it goes to the filter or after it comes out of the filter? If you do it before it goes to the filter, like I've done in this preset, all of the top harmonics that you're adding get filtered out. And because they get filtered out, it's a more mellow sound. But now if we drive it into the shaper, so we filter, then we shape, we get more of that high frequency stuff. Just a little bit. So that's meant to be a more mellow sound. The reverb is adding that down the whole aspect. And what I wanted to sort of happen was the higher stuff to go through the reverb, but not right away. So I set up this pre-delay, which means it takes a quarter of a second for the reverb to actually start kicking in. And that is handy for giving your sense of like a bigger room. It's almost like moving the walls further away so that you don't get the bounce back of the reverb until a little bit later. That I think is a great use. That one myself. We've got bubbled, just a sampler. And what's happening here is really based on the filter. I've got this filter set up to be a bandpass, but it's also morphing. So these LFOs are playing around with the filter morph, just so you can see what the filter morph does. It morphs your filter from low pass to high, band pass to high pass to notch. I've got it set somewhere. We had more of a band pass look to it, something like that. And this is just modulating that. And it's doing it at a pretty crazy fast rate randomly. And that's given us these like stepped movements. We could even put this into like a time thing. Got a bit of width, so it happens differently on the left and right. So that comes out in stereo. Change the timing, it gets different type of, sounds like a little glitchy, I guess, but it's kind of neat. And we're also moving the filter frequency at a random rate as well. Every quarter note, we're doing something random on each side, which gives this sound all that movement. Throwing a little bit of the frequency modulation, and we get that initial impact. We can turn that down. I like that a lot too, without frequency modulation. It's more mellow that way. And no reverb or anything. It sort of sounds like it, especially if you crank up the release a little bit. These modulations that are so random by using these noise waveforms kind of mimic almost like a sound delaying off into some reverb land. All without having to use reverb at all. The striker. This is meant to sound like you're striking. It's kind of thinking almost like drum percussive stuff. It varies quite a lot. That has to do with this. No, that's not it. That might be just the velocity sensitivity. You get some interesting tones depending on how hard you hit the keys or pads here. So we're really like kind of distorting the filter a little bit and then shaping it, which is adding all this extra noise. Lots of shaper on here. I kind of pictured almost at low octaves. Bass kind of sounds almost like sub 808-ish, but a little more crazy. We've got overhauled. Overhauled. Let's see here. What is going on in here? Oh, this is a fun one because I had some fun playing around with Dynamic Tube. That's a cool device, Dynamic Tube. I think it just makes you sound like you have broken equipment. So this is a very ominous, especially played in low octaves like this, very like menacing sound. Dynamic Tube is giving you this sort of like my speaker's broken vibe. So if we look at our filter, this thing is opening up at a very slow rate at about 9 seconds. It's taking about 9 seconds to go from almost nothing to, I think it was about 8 something. 666 seems like an appropriate frequency for this thing. But it's happening very slow. We're shaping it too afterwards, which is adding some more harmonic to it. Then running it through this dynamic tube and a dash of reverb. It's a dash of a heavy reverb though, 14%, but it's cranked up the size and very long decay time. You can adjust those, I guess, if you prefer not to have that. I thought it added to the like kind of atmosphere of this sound. The frequency modulation is also playing a pretty hefty role in this sound. If I were to turn this off, much more peaceful. But what I've got is a very low tuned frequency modulation. So when you go, one is like at the same pitch, I guess, as your sound. As you go up, you're at higher tones, and then, but if you go down, you're adding like octaves. You can hear all of it, which makes for this really cool, ominous, crazy sound. Ride Parts, I think this is another dynamic tube, and it is. This one I think will really give you a sense of what dynamic tube can do. So this one is meant to be like an air organ. You hear that noise at the end. But as if this thing was like, I don't know, put in a deep fryer or something. A lot of this is happening, really. I don't even think there's much need to go inside sampler for this one because I'm not using any frequency modulation. A little bit of filter envelope is happening here. Well, a lot, really. But most of the magic is happening with these three devices. So let's just kind of listen to them one by one. Bit reduction. It's because we're down to 8-bit. We've reduced all that dynamic range. And that gives us, as the sound fades out, there's not enough bit range to give you the nice smooth fade out. That's why you want a high bit range so that things can fade out nicely, have nice tails, especially like reverbs. They sound so much nicer when you have a good long, deep bit rate. Maybe I could probably just show you that real quick. It's kind of interesting to hear when you throw a reverb, like a nice long reverb on this sound. And it fades out nicely because I'm at 32 bits. But if I put on the Redux, probably even lose something at 16-bit. Not that noticeable. We get down here, you know, you get just the way it makes up for those fades is like noise. So yeah, it's a cool effect. I love Redux. It makes everything sound kind of like it's coming out of an old video game. Got that happening. We've also got dynamic tube. Dynamic tube is a very subtle one, but I think when you couple the two together, just gives it that sound, and then erosion is adding some noise to let you hear that alone. I'll put it all together, and you got your fried air organ. I love it, the way that fades away. The Megadrive Base. This one to me sounded like the Sega Genesis. And it's an FM synthesizer inside the Sega Genesis, so it would make sense that some FM modulation will give you this effect. Let's hear it. This one's monophonic. I wanted it to sound like a bass. Might have a spread on here, too. A little spread gives it a kind of nice sense of space, I guess. And this is really a result of the FM going on here. If we turn it off, we lose all that 16-bit Sega sound. So that's happening. I guess that's the triangle. Yep, triangle wave. Probably playing around with different textures. Like triangle for that. So there's your 16-bit tribute with the air organ. Alien Talk. It's got kind of a vowel-y sound. A little bit of reverb just to make it sound more important. So we're moving things around. We're opening this up over the course of a second and then bringing it down a little bit slower, 6.4. That has a big part to doing this sound. Gives us that kind of feeling. And the tuning is helping a little bit. This would be a fun knob to modulate, maybe with like an LFO and Max for Live. Sometimes I really want to put some of these effects on the instruments I make, but I don't want to, you know, knock out anyone that's doesn't have Max for Live. Let's put that guy in there. So maybe we'll just map that to. Slow it down, like reduce the depth a little bit. It's pretty cool. Yeah, you can have some fun with that, I suppose. You got Live Suite with Max for Live. This one's called Space-Time Cutter. To me, sounded like we were breaking through the space-time continuum. And this one makes use of some fun looping inside, I believe, the pitch envelope. Yeah. So the pitch envelope is dropping down. It's giving us that like sound. And the filter is also dropping down at the same time, but much slower. And this, so that's no frequency modulation whatsoever. It sounds like we're moving something else. Shaper amount. So you got the shaper set to hard here. So how much that adds to it. And because we're modulating that with a sawtooth, we're getting this really cool rhythm. It's also set to not come in right away. It fades in over almost 2 seconds. So that's what gives us the rhythm. You can adjust the rhythm. I thought the 16th note was kind of nice. Yeah, that sounds like you're cutting through the universe, arriving in the next dimension. Grand return. Cool effects on this one. It's a nice sound to like let ring out because stuff is happening slow on here. The filter is starting out very open, but then it's closing over 10 seconds. So it goes almost all the way open and then closes down to that. Okay, here it is without that. So we don't get that like tearing sound. So nice. Got our FM going, of course. It's giving us a lot of that filthy sound at the top. This is without any frequency modulation. And did I turn that? Yeah, it did. Good. So you can really hear a lot of the special stuff happens thanks to the frequency modulation again. Yeah, I mean, you could really just use this sound to turn the knobs a little bit as it plays. Really like a lot of depth and dimension to it. The chorus is on here to just kind of widen it, get to that feeling of dimension. Same thing with the spread. two things off, still cool, but not quite as much depth. We're shifting the zone a little, give a little different texture. We're at a 12. And I'm just filtering out a little bit of the top end, but we're also modulating that a little bit out of phase at eighth notes. So it's just giving the sound that extra movement. You can hear the movement maybe now as I crank the resonance. Two more to look at here. Land Escape. This one I had a little fun with some beat repeat, delay. Let's give it a listen. The beat repeat is decaying in pitch. I'll turn it to insert so you can hear what this just lets us hear only what's happening in the beat repeat. We set it to gate. And that's going into a delay. That's at ping pong. So it's giving us some, that is like, some little sprinkles on top of the sound. But we haven't set the mix so that we can hear both at the same time. It's not terribly loud or over the top. I did want the sound to be somewhat mellow. So there's some really cool movement going on. We've, of course, got our frequency modulation. Here's without it. And here's with it. It takes about 4 seconds for it to come in, another 14 for it to go away. But it's adding some nice brightness. And our filter is closing over the course of almost 9 seconds, down to this number here. But we are modulating the filter frequency quite a lot with some noise. So that's why we get these like rhythmic eighth note things going on, which is part of the reason I chose to put the beat repeat and the delay, because they're also both rhythmic. And I thought it would be kind of fun to have an extra emphasis of all that rhythm. So take these off. There's a lot of movement in this sound. That's all from LFO2. And since we have the width up to 100%, the left and right side are moving separately. I turn this down, it sounds more like just one movement. Let's turn it up again. Turn it up. And now there's this nice play off each other. Bring it up, beat, repeat. Almost sound like little spaceships going off or something. And then a delay to just really emphasize all of that. It's kind of cool. And then the Harpsichord. Play on words for Harpsichord. And this one has an arpeggiator on it. There was another one that had an arpeggiator, might have missed it. And a delay. Meant to sound a little bit like a harpsichord. I'm pretty sure I went in here and cranked this all the way down so I get that nasal sound. So there's your difference. Zone shifting. It's just changing the way the samples are stretched. So the lower samples are playing the higher notes, which means they're really stretched a lot, and the higher ones are playing the lower ones. So for this sound, I really wanted that more nasal, brighter sound. We're doing a lot of filter movement and real fast. So we're bringing it all the way down to 200 hertz or so, but it's starting out pretty high. Just to give you a sense of what's happening. Let me turn off the arpeggiator for a second. But as we bring this down, we stop hearing the movement of the filter as like a here we got a but here it's more just like a click because it happens so fast. This is a good way to get a percussive sound by using the filter envelope really fast. And I think I'm doing the same thing with the pitch envelope. I'm sorry, we were looking at the wrong one. So the filter is also set to a high pass. So we're not letting the low stuff in. So we're closing this, which is why it starts off real thin and then fills out. I'm going to just raise the sustain so you can hear that. It fills out. We bring down the sustain, we get this quick pluck. And if we bring this down, it's almost like laser beams at this point. It's more like a pluck sound. And same thing with this. The decay here is really quick. And that's giving us this kind of, I'm using the noise oscillator for the noise feeling. That's happening just for a little over 1/10 of a second. But when we turn it down, it just adds that pluck sound. Turn our arpeggiator back on. Got a cool movement going on. A little bit of delay to just season it a little. And that is the pack. So it's quite a variety of sounds, and all the way back to this condenser air organ is a little bit brighter. Some of the sounds make a little bit of noise, like that one. If you want those noises, kind of depends what key. We got a little click in that one. If you want a noisier air organ, then go with the C414. If you want a cleaner one, use the Heil PR41. It still has, there's always some noise coming out of this thing, but it's a little tamer on the condenser PR40. What's up, Rodrigo? Thanks for joining on YouTube. If you want to get rid of as much noise as possible, then go to these ones that have the NR for noise reduction. So this is the condenser. Not quite as much noise. I think it's especially apparent in the higher notes. So maybe I can drop in a, just for the heck of it, just to show you what I'm talking about. We're getting near the end, I suppose, anyway, but you're still sticking around, I'll still play around. So this is the noise reduced one, and that's really the note. A lot of this stuff is cut down, but if we do the same thing here, same note, we should see more noise. So there's more action going on here, especially down here. See, so we've cleaned it up with the noise reduction. And if I were to put this filter on, especially you'll see. There's all that noise. And let me just copy this entire thing and just paste it. Which one was it? There we go. We hear so much less. I don't know how well that comes across on YouTube/Zoom and all that, but the noise reduction did a lot, for cleaning up the sounds. And I'd say especially the cleanest one you're going to find is this one, this Init PR40 NR. It's the cleanest one of them all because the PR40, this guy right here, it picks up so much less of the noise of the air organ itself and just kind of gets the note. And then I ran it through Isotope RX to cut out some of the extra noise. This is the clean one. But I really didn't want to make a super sterile sounding pack. So all of these instruments are based off of the natural sounds, these inits here, of the condenser and the dynamic mic. And you can tell which one is which by looking at the color of the track. So anytime it's dark gray, you're hearing the C414. This sound was made with the C414, whereas this sound was made with the Heil. C414. That's the Heil. Again, that's the condenser. And that's the dynamic. In truth, I don't think it makes a terrible difference when you're actually putting some effects and frequency modulation. Maybe the frequency modulation picks up some of those extra frequencies that are in the C414. I don't know. But it's subtle, to say the least, which is probably why it was difficult for me to decide. So my method was to just make one instrument with the C414 and then another one with the Heil and just alternate and do that until I had a nice collection. And if you are using this pack, as it is part of the Music Production Club for June 2020, I encourage you to open them up, especially if you got sampler, to open them up and experiment with some of these different parameters, because it's just myself doing it, I learned a lot about how frequency modulation works inside sampler and how you can really get a lot of mileage out of these sounds without doing too much work with effects. It can be easy to rely on effects. There's nothing wrong with that, but I wanted to challenge myself with that exercise of using the frequency modulation. So I think the pack is cool in a way for just kind of exploring, so you can open them up and see what's happening in them and then try turning knobs and see what you get. Notice like we start tuning this frequency modulation here. You get a nice little pluck, then we get like something much more trebly. I love this sound. It might be one of my favorites. Exploring the looping envelopes is a lot of fun. I would certainly recommend you do that. It can get you some really cool movement, and as I was talking about, like it's almost like a delay, but you couldn't get that sound with a delay because it doesn't start with the initial impact, it fades in. So maybe we'll wrap that up here. This is the new pack, the Air Organ Pack. It's part of your Music Production Club membership. And when you join, you get all this fun stuff. These are the things that come with it right now. I'm always adding stuff. We've got a nice little Discord server going on where we can talk about making music, sharing ideas. And that's also where I post when these Zoom meetings will happen, where we can get together and talk and share ideas about making music. So that's the Music Production Club. Check it out. If you're so interested, it's the cheapest way to get my packs. And it's, to me, a great honor to have all the members in the production club. So thanks so much for watching. I'm signing off now. I hope you all have a wonderful night.